Alexei always thought the worst day of his life would be something expected, an accident, or the steady ache of growing apart. Instead, it happened in a single moment. One sharp, breathless text ping, a strange account transfer he never remembered making, then the world flipped upside down. Alexei could taste the panic swimming up his throat as he scrolled. 60,000 here, 130 there. Names that didn't make sense, some from accounts he never touched. The room felt colder than usual, and suddenly nothing felt safe. He glanced across the living room. Loren bent over her phone with her cheerful influencer face up, playing the same highlight reel their fans loved. 3 kids giggling in the background, toys scattered across the rug, the perfect TV fairy tale no one would ever doubt if all they had was Instagram. Only Alexei couldn't stop noticing the tension in Loren's jaw, the habit she had of flinching every time his footsteps echoed down the hall. The pieces didn't fit, and the silence pressed harder. He asked her about the transfers, half expecting a soft laugh, a quick joke, something honest. Her hand shook just slightly as she said she didn't know what he meant. In that instant, everything he thought was real vanished. The public story, flawless family, the successful influencer, the loyal, steady marriage, now looked paper-thin. He thought back to every fan's comment, all the perfect posts, the birthdays staged for 1,000 likes. Suddenly, they seemed like props for a play. The tension grew heavier. The curiosity started to turn. He pressed. She dodged. The pitch of her voice shifted. The air in the apartment changed. All those months, when she said she was just going to work meetings, there was a second life unraveling just out of reach. Loren finally confessed, but only when she could see there was no way out. She told him there was another person, Joseph, a name Alexei only knew from a few vague stories about business deals and new contracts. The rest tumbled out. There was another relationship, one that started as help. Someone stepped in when she was drowning in stress, in debt, in the pressure to keep up appearances. And suddenly, Joseph wasn't just a name. He was a threat to everything Alexei had built. He felt every ounce of trust ripped away in less than a minute. Shock didn't even cover it, and there was a rawness Alexei had never felt. Their story, the one fans called proof true love can survive anything, was crashing. He felt the echo in his bones. It wasn't only a private wound. The exposure meant everything else was about to spill, their friends, their families, maybe even their fans. The public would no longer see them as goals. Instead, people would pull apart every mistake, every financial slip, every awkward smile in old videos. Loren kept talking, as if trying to soften the blow, but each word made everything worse. The confession wasn't a relief or a new beginning. It was a bomb, lighting up all the hidden cracks they thought no one else could see. Neither of them remembered who spoke last that night. Somewhere between slammed doors and whispered apologies, Alexei realized their flawless image was the first thing to die. That's when the question started. Did Loren ever love him, or just the idea of the perfect marriage? Did he miss the signs out of stubbornness, or because he was too busy working 2 jobs, juggling fatherhood, and believing the picture she posted online? He wanted to yell, to make the pain stop, but the silence just grew. Suddenly, every half-truth and every late-night phone call felt like a trap. The next day, the news crept through their group chats. Someone unfollowed. Someone else started sending screenshots. DMs turned into rumors, and Alexei could already feel the online storm brewing before the first headline hit. His voice felt smaller now. The laughter was gone. He could see their life together pulling apart stitch by stitch. Every photo, every happy caption haunted him. Were any of those smiles real? Or was Loren already slipping away, one fake grin at a time? In their bedroom, divorce papers sat untouched, an ugly promise of what was coming next. And in that stillness, Alexei wondered if everything he knew about love was about to be proved wrong. What secret was worth all this risk? How did their story fall so far, so fast? The truth was still just out of reach, and the fallout hadn't even started yet. They called themselves a 90-day miracle, and on screen, it felt true. Sometimes, it seemed even the show's producers couldn't believe how easily Loren and Alexei sold the dream. Their wedding looked like a highlight reel straight from a travel ad. Their kids were little scene stealers. Brands lined up for a slice of this wholesome family. For a while, everything felt as perfect as it looked. The followers grew, the offers multiplied, their story was everyone's favorite plot twist. But those filters hid more than just the clutter in the house. They hid how heavy it felt to keep their image strong while everything else quietly cracked. Inside their apartment, life was anything but magic. Each week brought more photo shoots, fake smiles, paid appearances, and deals that demanded another piece of privacy. People in the comments asked what their secret was, how they stayed so strong. Nobody saw Loren scrolling her bank account at midnight, panicking as debts piled up behind every brand campaign check. No one saw the calendar reminders for date nights that felt more like content than romance. Off camera, the jokes ran out and silence settled in their living room. Not even the kids' laughter could drown out the tension. Loren started keeping secrets, first from Alexei, then from herself. The numbers didn't add up. Every next big thing for her influencer brand seemed to dig a deeper hole. Emergencies turned into payment extensions. She smiled for sponsors on Thursday, overdrew the account on Friday. Alexei never noticed until it was already crushing her, and by then, she never dared to tell him how bad it had gotten. He believed she'd fix things. She wanted to believe it too. The charade went on, fueled by hope and fear. She feared how quickly her entire world could collapse if the wrong person looked too closely. Most nights, Loren replayed old photos in her mind. Were those joyful trips to Israel really all that happy, or were they already pretending for someone else? Their marriage wasn't a TV episode. It was a complicated, stressful, beautiful mess, just like everyone else's, only nobody was allowed to see the mess. And then, Joseph appeared. In the beginning, he was little more than a business card. A man with answers, money, and more confidence than sense. He complimented her work ethic. He said all the right things about family and pressure, and for a moment, Loren felt seen, even appreciated. The late-night talk started innocently enough, usually about business, sometimes just about stress. He never asked for much, only listened with an intensity that made Loren drop her guard. It felt safe, safer than home. At first. By the time she realized how much she looked forward to those texts, it was too late. Joseph stepped in with promises. He said she shouldn't have to fight alone, not with a husband who didn't see how hard she tried, not with fans who only wanted the wins and never cared about the struggle. Loren let him see the numbers, her sleepless nights, her worst fears. He offered to fix things. Wires transferred, debts started disappearing one by one. She told herself it was help, nothing more. But with every problem Joseph fixed, a new complication grew in its place. Their secret meetings moved from calls to dinners, then to quietly booked rooms at a hotel nobody from Alexei's circle would ever visit. The fear of being found out only made the thrill sharper. Loren tried to ignore the small voice that whispered this wasn't support, it was temptation. Were her choices still her own, or was Joseph the one pulling the strings now? Publicly, she acted the part, all while losing grip of who she used to be. Most people only see the highlight reel. They never see the exhaustion, the anxiety, the cycle of selling happiness just to keep the roof over your head. Every time Loren posted another happy family photo, all she could think about was how fast the likes faded and the pressure returned. Fame became a trap. Hide everything that hurt. Smile. Never show cracks. No wonder secrets grew in the dark. Looking back, it seemed obvious. No real marriage survives on photos alone. And fame, once sweet, became suffocating. Loren relied on someone outside her marriage to feel whole. Joseph was a lifeline, but one that pulled tighter every time she reached for it. Was any of it real, or was she just a pawn in his game? The answer was hiding in plain sight. There's a fine line between a rescuer and a captor, and now, the choice was about to slip out of her hands. Loren once told herself there were two versions of her life. One that fans watched, where every sunrise brought new matching outfits and sweet captions, and one nobody was ever meant to see. The second life started out as a hiding place. Then it started to feel like the real one, the only place where she could breathe all the way in without pretending everything was okay. But the deeper she slipped, the more she started to lose herself for real. At first, there was guilt. It showed up every time she caught Alexei watching her with tired, hopeful eyes. Sometimes, she wanted to confess everything. Sometimes, she convinced herself she hadn't done anything so wrong. She told herself Joseph was just a friend, someone who really listened, who never brushed off her problems or acted annoyed by her anxiety. Loren tried to believe she would put it all away if only things calmed down for a week, but the chaos never left. Relief came next. The debts, no longer a shadow on her bank statements, started to vanish as if they had never existed. The pressure to smile for Instagram eased. The numbers stopped keeping her up at night. For the first time in months, it felt almost like she had found a way out. But nothing comes without strings. Joseph's kind, patient voice started to feel as present in her life as her own. He always seemed to know when to message, what to say, when to press her to meet, when to hang back. He didn't need to demand anything outright. The more Loren depended on his help, the less she felt able to say no. The mix of guilt and relief started to rot from the inside out. With every thank you, she hated herself a little more, but couldn't imagine walking away. The practical problems were solved, but the silence with Alexei turned heavier. Sometimes, late at night, she would study his face in the dim hallway light, searching for signs. Did he know? Did he suspect? Sometimes she wanted him to ask just to break the tension, just to force what needed to happen. Joseph's intentions became harder to read. At first, he was full of pep talks and promises. Later, when the transfers got larger, every act of kindness came with questions. What was Alexei doing today? Did Loren have access to their joint accounts, or only her own? Did she trust him not to let her fall so deep again, or was Joseph the only safety net she had? What started as support began to look more like a test. The messages that used to sound like lifelines now sounded more like commands. Alexei didn't want to believe the worst. He wanted to believe Loren was just tired, that things would get better, that some rough weeks didn't have to mean the end. But the day he saw the name Joseph print out on a joint account, the switch flipped from confusion to dread. When the truth finally came out and Loren choked through her first confession, the pain was so sharp he thought it would never dull. There's no way to make sense of 16 years of trust shattering in one word, one wire transfer, one admission too late. He asked her to explain, but every answer made things worse. The more she confessed, the more he looked back through old messages and found new ways to feel hurt. What came next felt like a blur. Family found out first, then friends of friends. DMs started to fill with "Are you okay?" from strangers and "How could she?" from everyone else. The comments that used to be all hearts and encouragement started to change. Some blamed Loren. Some blamed Alexei for not noticing sooner. Some said this is what happens when real life gets filtered for TV. Every post turned into a battleground. The line between supporters and dogpilers vanished overnight. It didn't take long for the receipts to make their way online. Fans who once celebrated Loren's wedding photos started digging up old hotel check-ins, screenshots, even Venmo transactions that slipped through. Nothing stayed secret. People who claimed to love the real Loren decided one mistake erased every good thing she'd ever shared. The hashtag war began. Was she a victim? Or did she make her own mess? Even their kids' photos weren't safe from speculation. Then the news broke for real. Reports of financial mismanagement. Whispers of police interest. What started as an argument in their kitchen spilled into full-blown investigation, the kind that ends with knock at the door and not a DM. The police got involved. Joseph's name turned up everywhere except in person. He stopped replying. For Loren, everything froze. There's no pause button on a scandal with its own momentum. Her face was everywhere, but nowhere felt safe. Alexei kept his head down for the kids, but his trust had turned to stone. Fans waited for her to post another explanation, the kind of post that ties everything up with a heart emoji and a promise to be better. But in this part of the story, nothing could be wrapped up tidy. Half the world wanted justice. The other half wanted blood. Loren could scroll past her own name in search results and see 100 strangers cheering for her downfall. In a single week, every version of her life fell apart, and the whole world watched, popcorn in hand. All that was left was the uncertainty, if anything, or anyone, could pull her back from the edge. The first morning Loren spent in court felt nothing like television. There were no lights, no hair and makeup team, nothing to protect her from how exposed she felt at every step. She sat behind a scratched wooden table, cold plastic digging into her arms, eyes trying not to flick toward Alexei. He kept his gaze locked somewhere far away. His face was blank, but his hands shook as he sat beside his lawyer. Everything about this place seemed drab and gray, including the future. Loren's name was called. The security guards kept their faces expressionless. Every camera lens felt like a threat, each flash a reminder of how fast her world had shrunk to a single humiliating headline. The charges sounded impossible. Misuse of marital funds, financial fraud, conspiracy. The indictment droned on, but Loren barely heard it. What she felt instead was the ache inside her chest, the way shame hollowed her out from the inside. Her lawyer asked questions about her work, her debts, the transfers she signed. The paper in her hands, statements, receipts, forms, felt heavier with each new accusation. She wanted to scream that she never set out to hurt anyone, least of all Alexei, but by now the truth and the facts seemed to sit on opposite sides of a chasm she couldn't cross. Alexei testified anyway. He took the stand with two tight fingers and a voice that only cracked once. The judge asked routine questions, but the pain in each answer felt raw. He told the court about the family they'd tried to build, all the little moments that masked bigger issues they both ignored. When asked if he hated Loren, he hesitated long enough to make her look up. She searched his face for fury or forgiveness, but it was softer than she remembered. Alexei said he trusted Loren the way a husband should, and he never imagined betrayal with her name at the center. The silence after his words burned. Loren's family was there, but further away than she'd ever felt. Her friends rolled their eyes or whispered behind their hands. Sponsors completely disappeared. Influencer acquaintances ghosted. The world that once hyped her perfect mom life treated her now like a warning. Walking through the courthouse lobby each day became a gauntlet past camera crews, old fans in shock, and a few cruel faces hiding phones behind purse lips. Even after the sessions ended, even when she went home for the night, there was no real rest. Joseph was nowhere. His messages went unanswered, his number disconnected. The lawyer tried to chase him down, hoping he would show at least for legal backup, a statement, something to soften the blow. But Joseph had gotten from Loren all he wanted and vanished as if he'd never existed outside the mess he left behind. The final humiliation was knowing she had let herself grow so dependent that she never questioned who he was when it mattered. Guilt turned into something different as days in front of the judge dragged on. For the first time, Loren felt more empty than angry. Of course, the debt needed fixing, and social media only ever asked for the best version of her. But under all of it, what she feared most wasn't losing money or followers. It was being herself, admitting all those weak, broken parts in public. She looked for safety in the wrong person at the worst time and ended up losing every piece of the life she thought couldn't be shaken. Public opinion, if possible, only turned sharper. Any time Loren scrolled through a news app or opened her DMs, someone had picked a side. Most hoped the judge would come down hard. A few offered stiff sympathy that didn't last much past the next headline. Her supporters, if they still existed, stayed silent, maybe afraid even to be seen commenting in her defense. Nothing about her fall felt private anymore. She got tagged in memes about cheaters, liars, fake influencers. Her children's names trended for a few hours, just long enough to sting. When the verdict came, there wasn't a gasp in the room. No shouts, no tears. Only the chill of reality. Loren Brovanik, sentenced for fraud, 3 months behind bars followed by probation. She nodded, quiet, her hands tightly folded in her lap. As the bailiff led her away, she looked for Alexei. For a moment their eyes met. He looked tired and older somehow, but not cruel. She wanted to apologize, to ask for forgiveness, but the words backed up behind her teeth. The door swung open, and she stepped forward without a fight. In the empty routines of jail, Loren faced herself in a way that shaving cream mirrors and Instagram handles never made her do. No makeup, no phone, no endless scrolling. She filled notebooks with apologies, reading over what she'd lost and all the ways she'd lied to herself about what truly mattered. She replayed each meeting with Joseph. Each time, she chose easy reassurance over hard honesty. Each second, she pretended the cracks in her marriage were invisible if she held the right pose for the camera. Meanwhile, Alexei rebuilt a new routine for the kids. No public drama, no rants about Loren. He protected them by never letting his pain spill over. Their house felt quieter, but safer. He woke up early for school lunches, held his children close, and promised himself he would not let them carry the weight of mistakes that weren't theirs. At night, he sat on the porch, wondering if he could ever trust anyone the way he once trusted Loren. Some nights, bitterness threatened to take over, but he fought it back with memories of the good years, the early adventures when nothing was settled, and every cheap pizza dinner made him believe in happy endings. His anger faded more each week, replaced with a sad kind of understanding. Everyone on TV acts out the parts they're given, but off-camera, every family breaks the same way: a lie, a crack, a choice. Alexei learned that forgiveness wasn't for the other person, but for the one who needed to move forward. He stopped asking why, and started focusing on what he could control next. The weeks passed slowly for both of them. Loren's sentence ended, but the reputation sentence kept running. Out in the world, some still only saw the headline. To the few who asked, she answered honestly now. Her marriage and fame didn't destroy her, but hiding her own fear of being seen did. As she stepped out, one part of her waited for a second chance. The other part wondered if forgiveness was ever possible after this kind of pain. That's why the story didn't feel over, not for her, and not for Alexei either. If redemption means facing yourself fully, neither of them were sure, yet they were ready. Sometimes, the most honest thing you can do is finally admit you're not the hero or the villain, but something smaller, struggling to learn from the wreckage. The next day felt different, as if something might still change even after everything burned. Out in the world again, nothing felt the way Loren remembered. During her short sentence, followers moved on. Hashtags faded, and the few polite texts she received from former friends trailed into silence. She rented a small apartment on the edge of the city, far from the neighborhoods that still whispered her name whenever she passed. Mornings brought the same quiet routine: coffee, cheap breakfast, work at the community center down the block where nobody cared about sponsorships or follower counts. It took weeks before she could walk to the corner store and not feel eyes studying the lines in her face, searching for leftovers of the scandal that played out across their living rooms months before. Social media felt dangerous, so she logged out for good. Sweeping the linoleum at the women's shelter, Loren learned to hide her hands in her sleeves and listen more than speak. She met women who lost things she still had: pride, even hope, and sometimes caught her reflection in a window and barely recognized herself. She'd promise each new client she wasn't there to fix them. She was there to be fixed, too, if that was possible for anyone with her damage. The life she built on views and casual applause now looked thin, barely real when pressed by honest setbacks or true pain. Behind the scenes, a little at a time, Loren started writing letters again. Not blog posts or quick feel-good notes meant for an audience, but hand-scrawled lines addressed to her 3 kids, explaining, not excusing, who she became and what she let go of. She wrote reminders to herself. 2 pages filled with questions she never dared post online. How many secrets can a person carry? How do you teach your children trust again after breaking it? Recovery, she found, never feels finished. Most of the time, it's silent work in empty rooms, not the grand comebacks fans expect. Alexei did not gloat. He stayed far from headlines and ignored every DM that tried to turn his family's pain into a punchline. He poured energy into home routines, school runs, grocery trips, late-night talks about science projects, and which movie to watch on Friday. The house felt emptier, but the air was lighter. Sometimes, when the stress crept in, he took the kids outside and watched them race their bikes down the block, not caring how neighbors stared. If anyone mentioned the divorce or the rumors, he answered just once. We're safe. We're healing. That seemed good enough for anyone who mattered. Privately, Alexei found his own version of recovery. He joined a group at the gym, ran every morning along the water, read books he'd put off during all those frantic TV years. His anger, while still present in the quietest moments, gave way to something like gratitude. It did not mean he forgave Loren for everything or excused what happened. It meant he could tuck the past into a drawer and keep it shut most nights. He thought less about questions and more about the future. If forgiveness came, it would be slow, honest, formed over months of patient living. The first time Loren tried to see him again, she wasn't sure if the door would open. Alexei took his time before answering, but when he did, she saw right away that the man standing before her wasn't frozen in old wounds. He looked tired, yes, but not bitter. They spoke in gentle sentences, short at first, then longer, sometimes pausing to let the silence finish what words could not. They talked about co-parenting, about missed birthdays and future holidays, about how laughter had become possible again for both, if not quite the same way. "I'm not here for apologies you don't want," Loren said, hands twisting. "I need to say I'm sorry for myself and for you." Alexei nodded, agreeing without a hint of resentment, only a quiet understanding. He didn't offer empty promises. He didn't ask about Joseph. He simply said he believed in second chances for anyone who worked to earn them, and that the best future for their children did not mean hating each other. The conversation ended with tired smiles and a sense that peace, while not repairing what was lost, was still a kind of win. On her way home, Loren stopped by the water's edge and closed her eyes, searching for the peace she never found in applause or perfect photos. She felt changed, not special, and wondered if anyone ever truly recovers from the kind of ugly heartbreak that chooses you in public. At night, she wrote down 3 things she wanted her kids to know when they were old enough to understand. Nobody is perfect. Forgiveness is harder to earn than attention. Real love, the kind that matters, survives scrutiny because you show up even when you're ashamed. Alexei likewise learned that rebuilding means letting yourself care again. He watched his children run wild at the park and realized, for the first time, that controlling what strangers believed never mattered. What counted was the bedtime ritual, the silly jokes, the way his kids relaxed into his arms after a rough day. In between helping with homework and planning dinners, he let himself look up old photos not as evidence of what he lost, but reminders of years that counted for something real and valuable. There was never going to be a TV ending, no perfect reunion or single gesture strong enough to erase the past. Loren and Alexei walked their separate paths carrying lessons and scars. They found enough forgiveness to allow peaceful exchanges, shared small victories as co-parents, and let the rest sit in the past where it belonged. People kept asking in faded comments and DMs if Loren would ever rebuild her online brand, or if Alexei would appear on another show. Neither answered directly. They were busy learning peace wasn't a status update, and real healing didn't come with views. Most fans never see what happens after the credits. Most don't stay long enough to wonder what's left in the silence after the biggest dramas play out. Those who did might be left asking, can anyone ever return to who they were before everything changed? Is reality the story you tell, or the way you survive when the world isn't watching? In the journey from perfect image to undeniable truth, some wounds stay open a long time, but sometimes those make room for whatever comes next. The dust settles, but the stories keep moving. Sometimes, even the couples no one expected manage to surprise everyone. There's one pair, still hiding cracks of their own, about to face the hardest test yet. The next time a favorite marriage is at risk, you'll want to see who survives and what comes out the other side.